The Edward Dunlop Awards of Excellence were established in 1984 by the Toronto Sun Publishing Corporation to perpetuate the name of Edward A. Dunlop, our first president. These awards commemorate his high ideals by annually recognizing the outstanding journalistic achievements of both individual and collective editorial staff members throughout the Sun organization. While the 10 qualifying categories represent the body, if you will, of a successful publishing enterprise, the men and women who compete for these awards are the spirit. Tonight, we celebrate these men and women. We recognize not only their achievements, but also their efforts, because it is their efforts that give us life, that give us meaning. In the feature writing category, all entries were strong, resulting in 2 honorable mentions. Much has been written about the Gaza Strip, and sadly, will continue to be. Reporter-photographer Stuart McCarthy's trip to Israel to cover the violence in the occupied territories resulted in a well-balanced accounting of the present conflicts, the fears, censorship, dangers, and tensions that often accompany the desire for peace. Powerful, evocative words and photos by McCarthy in the Toronto Sun brought words of praise from our readers for his unbiased, realistic coverage of the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Rial Simard, a bona fide mafia hitman, was the main witness at the murder trial of one of his former colleagues. Toronto Sun reporter Steve Payne, while covering the trial, learned that Simard had a phone in his jail cell in Montreal. Payne quietly tracked down the phone number and spent more than an hour talking to Simard. The result was a gripping, detailed account of a hitman's life that left the opposition in its tracks. So impressed with Simard, he sent Steve a personal message of congratulations, a copy of his autobiography, and a Christmas card. According to his executive editor, Philip Mathias's winning entry in the feature writing category, Inside the Pencer Empire, was one of the finest pieces of investigative reporting he'd seen in his 30-year career. Mathias, a veteran journalist and a senior writer at the Financial Post, was assigned the Pencer story by features editor Tessa Wilmot based on a feeling in the business community that something was seriously wrong with Gerald Pencer's reputation and his company, Financial Trustco Capital. 3 months of research using every knowledgeable source Mathias had collected during his 28 years in journalism, the help of Wilmot and many colleagues, great physical stamina and courage led to the publication of Inside the Pencer Empire and a Dunlop Award of Excellence in the category of feature writing. Columns are a real strength of the Sun newspapers, and this year's winning entries certainly reinforce this fact. When 14-year-old Benji Hayward accidentally drowned last summer following a Pink Floyd concert at the CNE, there was an attitude in most Toronto families that this couldn't happen to our kids. The Toronto Sun's Christy Blatchford proved them wrong. In pursuing her story, she spent 8 long hours sitting on the front porch of the Hayward house, letting people get used to seeing her there, and eventually talking to Benji's dad and the people who mattered. Plenty of times during that 8-hour stretch, she couldn't see through her tears. But her vigilance produced sensitive, responsible, hard news columns that spawned a new awareness of the drug problem among Toronto's young people, and won Blatchford a Dunlop Award and the confidence and gratitude of the Hayward family. Cartooning, all the complexities and perspectives on newsworthy issues distilled into one high-impact, humorous visual statement. All eyes were focused on Toronto in June when world leaders gathered together for the Summit Conference. Toronto Sun artist Dick Gibson was faced with the task of illustrating a double-page spread for the food section titled Sun Summit Supper. Using caricatures of the leaders, their country's flags, and representative recipes, Gibson took great delight in creating the artwork. And the witty spread drew rave reviews. Having covered 5 national leadership conventions, the Toronto Sun's award-winning political cartoonist Andy Donato knew the Calgary Olympics would have more color, excitement, crowds, and action, and would likely make a great cartoon spread. Armed with his inimitable wit and style, Donato uncovered a wealth of material in Calgary, and the Olympics became the perfect showcase for his considerable talents. Picked up by both the Edmonton and Calgary Suns, it gave us a distinct edge on the competition and gave Donato an award of excellence for his creativity. Spot news and photos are the heart and soul of this business. It was 8 p.m. in London, England, 2 days before Christmas Eve and less than 2 weeks after the Clapham rail disaster in South London. A news bulletin announced the Lockerbie air disaster. Knowing it was too late to catch a flight to Scotland, European Bureau Chief Mark Bonikoski worked the phones past 2 in the morning to come up with a news story that would stand the test. A bomb seemed the only explanation. 3 hours later, he was on his way to Lockerbie, arriving in time for the horrendous search for wreckage. Remaining on the scene for 2 days, Bonikoski filed his last column from Lockerbie for Christmas Eve as the residents tossed their Christmas trees into the garbage. Just days before, these trees had been costumed in tinsel and twinkling lights. Acting on a tip from an X-ray technician in a local industrial lab, Toronto Sun reporter John Schmid and rewrite man John Causeway ultimately forced the Ontario Lottery Corporation to fire its president, withdraw 12 million tickets for a profit loss of close to $8 million, and fire the printer of the faulty tickets. The Lottery Corporation publicly refused to believe the Toronto Sun's claims that some scratch-and-win lottery tickets could be X-rayed without disturbing the surface. When intensive testing proved this correct, the OLC was severely reprimanded for not reacting sooner to our story, and the Toronto Sun won kudos for its carefully researched expose of the Ontario Lottery Corporation. Every year, one news event occurs that merits the title Story of the Year. George Gross's world exclusive on Ben Johnson was the story in 1988. Media from all over the world chased Ben Johnson following his disqualification in Seoul. He chose to talk only to corporate sports editor George Gross. A call from Johnson's lawyer to publisher Godfrey led to George returning from Ottawa to accompany Paul Godfrey, photographer Craig Robertson, and the Jamaican Consul General to a secret location where Johnson was in hiding. 4 stress-filled hours later, Gross had his world exclusive, a testament to his stature in the Canadian sports scene, and the Dunlop Awards had their 1988 winner of Spot News. There's no question that the 1988 Calgary Winter Olympics were an outstanding success, and Calgary Sun photographer Dave Chidley captured the flamboyance and color of the games in his award-winning shot of the opening ceremonies. It was a special day, emotions were running high, and Chidley was one of 7 Sun photographers at the ceremonies. Stationed at the back of McMahon Stadium with a strong wind blowing toward him, Chidley used an extremely wide-angle lens to capture the frenzy of activity and excitement as the crowd reached to grab the balloon speeding past. June 19th was a real summit scorcher. Toronto Sun photographer Ken Kerr had begun his day with 30 other photographers running from one bus to another to catch the world leaders arriving at City Hall. As the Reagan's bus was sighted, the photographers sprinted en masse across City Hall Square, jockeying for prime photo positions. The Reagans were greeted warmly by the Maroonis with a double kiss, and luck was on Ken Kerr's side. In the right spot with the right lens, Kissin' Cousins was born, and a show-stopping front page brought rave reviews from all. Feature photography is designed to capture the eyes, minds, and hearts of readers. Our winners this year did just that. It was a photographer's dream. Calgary Sun photographer Danny Reidelhuber was invited to the photo opportunity for the Olympic Plaza Laser Light Show. Perched atop Calgary City Hall to witness and record this visual spectacle, Reidelhuber was within earshot of the show's director, who was controlling the laser lights and fireworks. The director gladly complied with his request to keep the lights on for 6 minutes, the time needed to record the full beam. The result? Night lights at Olympic Plaza became a Calgary Sun spread, graced our annual report, and now hangs proudly in many a Calgary home. When the work crew slows down and a few whistles blow, take it in stride. The architecture they're admiring is a perfectly constructed pair of legs. Take one willing worker, 3 sets of lovely legs, a creative photographer, and you got legwork. Dave Aleko of the Calgary Sun at his fashion shot featuring the newest stockings and highest heels teased the reader's senses, stopped traffic, and won the judges' praise with a Dunlop Award of Excellence. Whether it's the Winter Olympics, a fashion spread, or RRSPs, our design staffers illustrated once again just what it is that makes our pages sing. Calgary Sun graphics editor Randy Hill describes the Winter Olympics as the most thrilling, challenging, and difficult 16 days of his professional career. Each day under enormous pressure as the eyes of the world were on Calgary, Hill's job was to capture the mood and excitement of the games with the most powerful and eye-catching front pages possible. In true Sun style, he played the photos large and used strong and colorful type to give a poster effect each day. The joy on Carolyn Waldo's face, the anguish as Herman Zurbriggen wiped out and ended the Swiss dream of gold, and the celebration of Karen Percy as she continued to put Canada on the podium. A stunning string of front pages that set the tone for the Calgary Sun's first-rate games coverage. Inspired by her sister's incredible collection of rainbows, layout artist Lisa Shaw of the Calgary Sun created, arranged, and executed Sunwear Over the Rainbow and won an honorable mention at this year's Dunlop Awards, a complete one-woman effort which resulted in an exciting and colorful fashion spread. Creating clever, graphically enticing layouts for business stories can be rather challenging, notes Paul Stolberg, graphics and design editor at the Financial Post. And the subject of registered retirement savings plans is no exception. As an art director, he must ensure the design treatment doesn't overwhelm or compromise the integrity of the subject. Stolberg's made-to-measure idea fulfilled these requirements while also enticing readers into the report. It visually conveyed the idea of tailoring individual RRSP needs much faster than headlines could. In the category of editorial direction, not only did the Financial Post win an award of excellence, they also won the Summit Coverage Stakes over their chief rival, the Globe and Mail. The fact that their coverage was more detailed, more informative, and definitely more readable was due in great part to the organizational ability and leadership of senior editor Fred LeBolt. His operation ran with military precision and never lost its sense of humor. No small feat in a newsroom wrestling with a recent conversion from weekly to daily. Assembling a core group of writers to launch the summit coverage in April, LeBolt felt the momentum and excitement increase as June 19th drew near. A special logo was drawn up, charts and graphics were banked, reporters assigned to each of the 7 participating nations, features, photos, and color stories were planned in this crucial test for Toronto's newest daily. When it was over, everyone involved agreed the Post had achieved its goal. They never lost their lead position in covering the summit. Our final categories, sports writing and sports photography, are recent additions to the Dunlop Awards. They reinforce the fact that our coverage of sporting events is unsurpassed. George Bell's spring fever continued throughout the Blue Jays' 1988 season, reaching its peak one July night in Minnesota when he and manager Jimmy Williams were involved in a major confrontation. Bell, whose reluctance to be interviewed had led to an uneasy relationship with the Toronto media and contributed to the misunderstanding many have of him, refused all requests to comment the night of the eruption and the following day. Returning with the team to Toronto, temperamental George finally decided it was time to talk. He called sports editor Wayne Parrish, a writer he felt he could trust to report his views fairly and with sensitivity. "I can't take it anymore." The result of Parrish's exclusive interview painted a poignant picture of an athlete in turmoil and provided rare insights into the life of a frustrated superstar. There are thousands of words written each year about the chief of Maple Leaf Gardens, yet Toronto Sun feature writer Gene Sonmore's profile of this very complex man was one of the most revealing portraits ever done. Every aspect of Harold Ballard's character was laid bare for Sun readers. Sonmore was initially delighted to be assigned a feature on what she considered the biggest circus in town. However, she soon found out that some circuses are more fun than others. Nobody wanted to be quoted saying anything substantial about the man, not even his volatile children. There were occasional flashes of hope, but Yolanda Ballard's stalling tactics were outrageous. Sonmore hung around the gardens, sat outside Yolanda's home, and finally the call came. The great one would see her. No ground rules, no deals, just a marathon interview one Friday afternoon. Harold Ballard held the door wide open on his life. The circus was finally over. There were many photos of Canada's darling, Liz Manley, as she won the silver medal at the Calgary Olympics. But Fred Thornhill managed to catch her look of absolute jubilation as she burst into a huge grin and bit into her winning medal. Because Manley wasn't a medal favorite and all eyes seemed to be focused on Katarina Witt, it was an emotional high for all Canadians when lovely Liz skated her way to a silver. Thornhill's photo captured forever the magic of that special moment. Regardless of what has happened since, every Canadian who watched the men's 100-meter final at the Seoul Olympics will long remember those electrifying 9.79 seconds when Ben Johnson left Carl Lewis in his dust. The Toronto Sun's Stan Behall was there for every spine-tingling moment and says he has never agonized so long over something so short. No one could predict from where the definitive picture would be taken. 8 hours before the event, 900 photographers crammed into 600 positions at the track and prayed they had picked the right vantage point. Just minutes before the race, lane allocations were announced, and the superstars were 2 lanes apart. Behall's lens selection had to be cast aside along with all his other logistical preparations. Under tremendous pressure in covering such an important event, with his reputation on the line and his Canadian heart on his sleeve, Behall tried to maintain his composure long enough to not only record the race, but to also capture that definitive split second on film. There's no question Behall achieved both. The judges have chosen to award 2 special citations this year. Both involve major news events that allowed our Western Suns to shine in the eyes of the world. August was supposed to be a quiet time at the Edmonton Sun. Having just spent a tremendous amount of energy on the wedding of the great Gretzky, the sports editor, city editor, and 2 of their top hockey writers were on well-earned holidays. Then the news of the trade of the century broke. Waves of shock, disbelief, sorrow, and anger quickly covered Edmonton. The hero who would help put them on the map and won their love and respect was leaving. Assistant City Editor Gary Poignant quickly stepped in to assemble and dispatch reporters to cover every angle, coordinating assignments with news, sports, and photos. He ensured all bases were covered before the key players went into hiding. Vacationing Terry Jones spent the next 3 days working out of his hotel room in Kansas City to provide breaking copy. The full impact of his contribution was felt when Gretzky's new bride, who'd had enough of Pocklington, returned his phone call, and the Edmonton Sun had a national scoop. When the dust settled, daily circulation had rocketed, and it was the Edmonton Sun's front pages, quotes, and pictures that were picked up throughout the world. As the Winter Olympics approached, expectations were high at the Calgary Sun. Nothing less than first-quality coverage would be acceptable from a host newspaper. When it was over, journalistic peers gave the Sun a glowing report. During the 16 days, they had produced some of the finest newspapers in their history. Assistant Managing Editor Rob Ferguson had the massive task of coordinating the coverage and arranging the logistics of more than 100 individuals. All departments at the Sun were involved, and more than 24 special supplements were produced, along with the daily news and special features. A mammoth task, superbly executed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are proud to present the 1988 Edward Dunlop Awards of Excellence.